Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Is the mic on? Excellent, excellent. Well, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience with real-time economic data using R. One version of this talk is basically trying to convince policy analysts to not use Excel and economists to not use data anymore. There's probably a different audience, so keep it in mind that I might be converting you to stuff you already believe, but go with the flow and hopefully learn some cool stuff about how we deal with economic data. Why you should use R. When I'm talking about real-time economic data, I'm talking about like the jobs numbers, inflation numbers, GDP numbers, numbers that come out generally at 8:30 in the morning on certain days every month or every quarter or sometimes every year, and in which it's like 5 or 10 minutes when people like kind of set up the first draft of this. So this is a little more political than maybe some of the more academic talks here. But like, is the data good? How is it good? How is it bad? And there's headline numbers people can look at, but there's so much data there. And how can you create a workflow to be able to analyze it pretty comprehensively, draw really strong conclusions, but not take the days or weeks an academic might normally take? Try to get it out within 5 or 10 minutes. And I have found, having tried a lot of different methods, R to be basically the best version of it. So why me? Why am I talking? I've been doing this for a while. I had the pleasure, I've worked with reporters on stories about this. I worked for a think tank that did this kind of analysis called the Roosevelt Institute. In 2024, I was honored to work in the White House, where I coordinated the analysis of the data along with people at Treasury, Labor, our Council of Economic Advisors. And so I'm very conscious about the ways in which stories can get landed and how you try to get the best picture as quickly as you can. I'm going to make a quick note. I pitched this in whenever I did, May or June. Since then, a few weeks ago, the BLS commissioner, who oversees the data as a nonpartisan role, was fired by the president. I'm just going to put this statement from the previous commissioner, who was appointed by President Trump, who worked, this is cut off here, worked at the Heritage Foundation, considered a very serious, but also very institutional, conservative economist, and that was a statement that's put out there. And so there, I come here as of, when I pitched this in May and June, saying that, the US data is some of the best in the world. It's high quality, it's nonpartisan. People there, the civil service there is fantastic. They take it very seriously. If you've ever interacted with them, and you can just call them up on the phone and ask about their seasonal adjustment methods, and they will walk you through it. They're really dedicated people, and I hope they stay that way. So with that, interesting. Okay, this might be a little cut off. So, just to give you a sense of how it actually worked at the White House, the Council of Economic Advisors would get the data the day before. They get it in the early afternoon for data that comes out the next morning at 8:30. They don't actually get files. They get a printed copy of the results, which they have to manually put into their software. And then from there, they come up with the initial round of analysis, which they give to a handful of very select people. This is obviously market-moving data. It's very sensitive. It's really high quality to make sure it is treated with respect and not accidentally leaked or anything like that. So the president gets it, the chief of staff, NEC director. In parallel, there's a bunch of teams working to make talking points and statements and products that has no idea what the number is going to be until it comes out like everyone else. I headed up that process. So having to kind of plan out a lot of different scenarios and then know which one was actually accurate within seconds, if not minutes, of when the number actually comes out is pretty intense. And immediately getting on the phone with the economists and right as soon as it comes out and trying to figure out what just happened, what to make of it. Interesting enough, R is available to White House staff, but libraries had to be approved in a process that took years. So we didn't have the tidyverse until summer of 2024, when I think the request first went in 2021. I was using R in the aughts, so I was like, base R, let's go. But like everyone much younger was freaked out. We had a text file of just like makeshift duct-taped tidyverse commands that could just be read in by a source, and it was brutal and very unpleasant. So I'm glad they got those libraries, and I hope they get more. Okay, interesting. This is cut off slightly. I think it'll be okay though. So where does everyone else get it? Well, you can get it from API calls to the various agencies. Library BLS R is like a very important one. You can download the flat files themselves off the BLS website. I'm sure they don't love people doing that a lot, but people do it, and we're going to do it for this exercise. You can get it from private services. Haver and Bloomberg are popular ones. And then Fred is just an amazing resource attached to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. If you've done economic data, you've probably seen it. But it's a really easy interface. And they have their own API, and you can also just download it yourselves. I've talked to a lot of reporters and analysts who create tons of R scripts and then run them every morning and then kind of look at the data. And that's kind of the general approach. Ideally, you make it a little bit more concrete. But why R? So first, the BLS flat files in particular are tidy. And then when you download the data from Fred, you can make it tidy very easily. So what does that mean is that it fits into the grammar of graphics and the general tidyverse very, very well. So this is, CS is the current employment survey. That's a function I wrote. You can take a look at it, and here's what it looks like, right? You get series IDs, you have values, so this is all employees, 154,000. Total non-farm. And as you can imagine, industry name, you have total non-farm, total private, manufacturing, construction, all employees, thousands. You have also under data type text, hourly earnings, weekly hours, percent female employment, all these different things, and it's all in the same tidy universe. That makes it incredibly easy to put it into ggplot. So, okay, I'm not sure how we're gonna. Imagine you can see the whole thing. So this is a very common thing, right? This is we're gonna take we're gonna have it look at the maximum date, so this can run every month because it'll pull out what the maximum date is, and just compare the year-over-year change, and then it will factory order it. This gives us a graphic you've almost certainly seen in many different things, right? Now there's one line here. Watch this line, data type text, all employee thousands. You'll probably know what this is, what we're about to do here, but many people do not. So it gives us. We wanted to instead look at average hourly earnings, the change in average hourly earnings over 1 year. We just replaced one line. We just changed the data type text, right? This is a very standard thing you do in tidy, but if you only used Excel to look at this data, your mind has probably been blown, right? Because this saves you an insane amount of work, and it's reproducible to so many different things. So for instance, right now, so all these graphics are things I use every month, some version of them. And they're also ones that are very relevant right now. So everyone's watching, tariffs have gone into play, and people are watching the price increases. CPI is Consumer Price Index. It's a set of surveys of tens of thousands of items that are condensed into about 400 items, or 300 items, into 8 categories. And you can download the CPI flat files, and then you just pick a few items, appliances, apparel, household furnishing. Go ahead, and this is what it looks like. If you'd see it, you'd see a value for a price index for each of those individual items. This is really easy to just put into a facet wrap, right? And so while a lot of people are spending a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, where's the tariff showing up, where's it not, it's very easy for me to say, okay, well, we've already seen it in appliances and household furnishings, but not so much elsewhere, not in clothing yet. And I get this within a second of the number coming out, right? Or certainly within a minute, this is all compiled. So I can quickly see where are things showing up. And we can do more sophisticated things with like charts and things, but just this general thing applies through it. It makes it very easy to condense a lot of information quickly. Okay, so you probably already know about ggplot and the grammar of graphics more broadly. There's another reason to use R is because R has just so many great visualization tools. So as I said, the Consumer Price Index, you hear one number, inflation's gone up 10% over the past year, or something like that, depending on what you catch it. But that's actually made up of a lot of prices, hundreds of prices, calculated out of tens of thousands of statistical estimates. So one thing economists started to do is to say, okay, well, that's the average, but what's the median change, right? What's the median change in inflation? Maybe that gives us another set of information. Maybe it's not being so much driven by the tails, like crazy price spikes in oil or energy or food, for instance, caused by international things that are a little less related to maybe what's specifically happening here. And so you can go ahead and download that off Fred, CPI and median CPI, and you have that graphic, and people were talking about this. When I started looking at this when inflation became quite high and everyone's like correctly freaking out about it, I was like, we have a lot of tools to visualize distributions. Why not use Geom Ridgeline, which is a very fantastic ggplot? So this is something I started to put out there in the world, which was just let's just take the distribution of the whole price and visualize it over time. And this, I think, helped quite a bit because, when inflation started to slow down a bit in its acceleration in 2023, we could see here that it was actually coming down across the board. It wasn't just driven by tails. And the median obviously had some of that information, but didn't have all that information. This was one additional element. I think, GG Ridges is like a very cool library, so I like loved showing this graphic. But more generically, we can very easily look at distributions and do other kinds of impacts on things like this. We can also use, for instance, distribution of job gains. Are a majority of industries, we have access to hundreds of industries of data. Are a majority of them adding jobs, or is it just a few jobs? Where's the concentration? That's a big thing people are talking about right now. What job categories are more or less correlated with the business cycle itself? Are they causing job gains or the most of the job gains? Again, analysis that can be, once you kind of think through what you want to do, you can just put it into an automated workflow. There you go. Oh, there you go. Wait, okay, so I think I see what we can do. Another thing, speaking of modeling, R has so much statistics built into its workflow DNA that it is very easy to just, in addition to automating graphics and summary statistics, automate a lot of sophisticated analysis in a way that shoots out pretty quickly, right? So the Phillips curve is it's a model of estimating inflation that's based on previous inflation and how much demand there is in the economy, how much spending there is in the economy, proxied by how low unemployment is. Controversial theory, it doesn't work out very well, but it is a very popular way of estimating it. And a formula like this is something that's very easy just to pipe right into your download and your summary and also see that alongside everything else you're looking at. So let me give you the full code on this. This is something that freaks out a lot of people. Federal Reserve economists spend all kinds of crazy methods doing it, but we can get a really rough approximation. And again, it's like any workflow, right? The very first part, we get our data. The middle part, we adjust our data, so it's exactly how we want it. And then with Library Broom, which I love, we can just go ahead and estimate it on a subsection, given the values from before the pandemic in 2019, go ahead and predict it, and then pipe it right into ggplot. So, we can see what people predicted inflation would do during the reopening, and then what it actually did. And if you're, the Federal Reserve, when it put out its estimates that kind of missed the call, they were doing a lot of very complicated things that involved huge amounts of things, but they were fundamentally doing this. And I could get a rough approximation of it within seconds of the data coming out. So I could have a sense about whether or not it was converging or not. And you can see, obviously, it's converged quite a bit, but it hasn't all the way. And then last, how much time we got? Another really cool thing about R is just so many libraries, given the strong academic and research base behind it, it connects to so many different parts of the government in a way that's so useful for getting data into a workflow that it can happen immediately. For a lot of places, you have to go to, there's going to be a talk this afternoon about tidy census, which I'm very excited about. A fantastic library. You can imagine, okay, I got to go to the census. I got to download the data. I got to move the data to the folder. I got to do the thing. I got to clean the data. You can just pipe that right into a pipeline on monthly data in a way that's very powerful. Get you some quick answers quickly, especially if you're anticipating them. So, the BLS gives us employment data for 400 MSAs. It's at the end of the month, not the beginning of the month. And this is what it looks like. So you have a town in MSA in Alabama, and you have all employees in thousands. There's 33,000 workers there. This is a huge cross-section of the data. What can we put it against in a way that's interesting or compelling? Right now, a lot of people are interested in the relationship between immigration and the jobs numbers, about whether or not slowing immigration is slowing the jobs numbers. And a lot of very smart people are spending a lot of time working on that. For a quick approximation, we can just go ahead and grab the 2023, the last year we have the full year survey for census, I believe. We just go ahead and grab foreign-born share of places for each MSA in the country. This is a very simple command. It's literally just those lines. Something that if you didn't have access to tidy census and the huge amount of academic work in R could take you a full day. This takes literally seconds. There is some text wrangling in the background to get it to merge, but it's much less than you'd think, thankfully. And then as soon as the data comes out, I can plot a percent change in the job growth this year versus the percentage of foreign born, and it does seem like there's a relationship, and I can pipe out some summary statistics to a markdown file, for instance, and say, okay, it does seem like there's a story there. This is worth now and spending more time to investigate later once we get some breathing space. And so with that in mind, those are 4 reasons I highly recommend people who are interested in doing this kind of work use R, because the tidy data workflow makes it very easy to look at a lot of different things very quickly. The grammar of graphics, being able just to, I forget the analogy, but it's like you have if a graphic is a sentence, being able to change the noun without changing anything else makes it very powerful for seeing a lot of different things. You can integrate statistical modeling into it that can often be quite sophisticated, but that can run very quickly and still get you your answers. And the extensive amount of background libraries, I really does think puts it over the edge against its competitors. So I would love to take any questions you have about any part of this.